recording. And welcome to everybody. I'm so glad you're here today. We have our special guest. Hi, Ruth. We have our special guest, Ike Fontaine. He's the founder of Future Media, and he helps leaders develop long-term podcasts that drive business growth and impact. He has launched dozens of podcast channels, accumulated over 80 million downloads, and under his vision, and has led many channels to top 10 and top 100 rankings on Apple Podcasts. So let's welcome Ike today.
Hello.
Glad you're here.
Make me sound great. It's great to be here. It's been a pleasure getting to know Amy and kind of the work that she does and kind of the work that you guys are doing together. I know that most of you are authors, and I work with, basically leader-led people who are on their thought authority journey, kind of like their influence, journey. They're looking to, help people within the world with their solutions that they provide, or their experiences and their insights. And there's like a deep connection between those individuals and media, and for my part, specifically podcasting. I work with a lot of different authors, pre-authors and post-authors throughout the podcasting process. I've done shows where there have been individuals who never thought they'd write a book. They started a podcast and they got, a couple years or a year into their process, and they'd be like, wow, there's like actually something really here. There's something even deeper than just the podcasting related content. There's now these ideas and these interviews and all this breadth of knowledge and experience where they're like, there's something that we could leverage here. And then also on the flip side, there's plenty of people who, have written books and have been writing books. And then they realize that, wow, there's actually something here with this content that could be leveraged, and we could actually, I could, potentially create a podcast. So I've been helping authors in that space for a long time. So it's been such an incredible journey. So I do, what I prepared something today is really a session. It's a webinar. It's, a piece that's going to help individuals understand what's happening in podcasting today. So it's really educational. It's going to help you understand what's happening in the ecosystem and really like where the opportunities are. And it's probably going to answer a lot of questions that you're probably thinking right now. And those questions could be, well, does it matter? Is it popular? Should I be doing it? What are some examples of people doing it successfully? And probably the questions could go on. I'm gonna.
Right, and I just want to let you know, I said, I put in the chat, if anybody has questions as you're going, just pop them in the chat so we make sure we get to those.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm actually just opening up the chat, so like I'll kind of like keep an eye on all those.
Right, and I'll
and if anyone wants to, if anyone feels like they want a quick stop down at some point, like I'll have moments where we can do that, and if not, I can just kind of keep going, and there'll be plenty of time at the end for us to talk about questions and what I do in the world and like in all the stuff. So let me do this and share my screen.
Okay, I got to give you access to share your screen there. Okay, there you go.
Awesome. Okay. Assuming that you all can see.
Yes, looks good.
Welcome to Podcast Masterclass. Okay, so I have let me actually pull this bar up here so I'm not like clicking by accident. So my goal with doing this is to help individuals, figure out if podcasting is right for them, and if it is, the best next steps for them, and to really just help them on their podcasting journey. So you can really walk away from today with a clear understanding of like what it means to you and what you can start taking advantage of if there's an opportunity for you. That could be whether you want to start your own podcast, if you want to relaunch a podcast, if you want to start podcast guesting, if you want to, kickstart growth strategies that I share. That's my goal and my promise for today. So let's get into the three key learnings that we're going to focus on today. I boiled them down. First, I want to talk about why podcasting is a critical platform and why it's becoming one of the most fastest growing communication, marketing, community channels for leaders and brands. And also the other like little point to this is like, and why podcast listeners specifically are some of the most valuable type of content consumers on the internet, like some of the most valuable types of engagers on the internet. Number two, I want to talk about like why podcasting is unique comparative to other things that you can do. There's so many different ways to create content, to grow your authority, to collaborate with other people. We can literally name off like, a dozen. You could blog, you can show up on TV shows, you can start YouTube channels, you can start TikToking or Facebooking, or it's just like the things go on, right?
You can write books.
Say what? Right. You can write books, right? Like there's all these different ways that you can like just do things. And I want to talk about like why the sides of podcasting and like why they're unique and why it gives you an upper edge versus some other things. Everything has their positives and negatives, right? The other thing to learning too is like, it's just an area where you can turn somebody into basically someone who has not a whole lot of influencer awareness or network into somebody that has a huge leading voice, and you can do it in a matter of weeks to months with podcasting. It can be an environment that can highly accelerate you into a place that you didn't think was possible. And I'll talk more about what that looks like and kind of what that means. Number three, I want to really give you guys a green, like a kind of like a green light filter that I use with everyone that I work with, or people who do discovery calls with me, or really I do this in most of my masterclasses. It's like, I want to walk you guys through a process to help you understand if podcasting is something that could be valuable to you, like now or in your journey. And there's two parts there. One part would be, are you right for podcasting? Or do you kind of have some of those things that make you called to podcast and that would make you a successful podcaster? And is your brand or your business right for podcasting? Because there's kind of two things there, because anyone could just like be a good host, but is it a good quotient for those two things to be combined? Because they're two different aspects. So I know that Amy gave a little bit of an intro to me. I just want you guys to kind of have a bit of an overview of who I am, what I do in the world, where I come from, a little bit of my origin story. So I've been podcasting for a better part of a decade. During that time, I've had the opportunity to launch and grow many shows. I'm also a growth marketer and an operational specialist. What that means is really before I started my own agency and my education company, I was working in the marketing world, and simply I was helping hundreds of small businesses scale through digital and operational strategies. So that looked like, we were doing email campaigns and website builds, and we were developing web pages and like funnels. So like when someone had a new product, people would go through the flow and highly convert. I'd be doing paid media or like ads, and we'd be running those campaigns. We'd be launching YouTube channels. We'd be launching podcasts. We were doing all these things, helping people on the internet basically like grow their businesses easier without having to like basically do it all themselves. But all of those experiences gave me all of this rich context. And as I was looking at all the things that I was doing, podcasting was this thing that kept coming back. It was kind of like this little light that kept flashing in front of me, where I kept noticing when I kept doing that with people and saw what they were doing, it was really hitting a lot of the marks that they were looking to achieve. They were looking to grow thought authority, grow influence. They were looking to collaborate with other individuals that had audiences or had a network that they wanted to grow into. So all of these experiences really started to give me a springboard for what was to come. And I've been fortunate enough to launch and grow many shows. This is just literally a small handful, but it gives you the diversity that I think is most important to like kind of articulate, which is like done shows spanning from politics to finance, health and wellness, comedy, entertainment, entrepreneurship, marketing. I've also done shows that are highly niched or, like kind of very targeted in a very specific subject matter, like narcissistic trauma, relationship therapy, psychedelics, pro-private education, spiritual psychology. And really through all of these experiences that I've shared, I've developed this process that have helped shows basically develop, launch, and grow their authority in their businesses through podcasting. I'll share more about that like later on. And I know that this all sounds like really great, like I'm just showing you all these shows, but like, I think context is everything. So like I have a couple of slides to kind of like show you guys a bit of like what success looks like or how these people are using their shows like in reality, right? Because I could just say here like relationship therapy and like it's a great show, but like what does it actually look like, right? So Stephanie Estima is a fabulous case study. I started working with her right after she actually launched her show. So she was kind of like someone who was like, I'm a do it myself type person. I see people doing podcasts. I'm just going to go do it. So she went and did it. Not going to poo-poo what she did. Like she had the right idea in starting her own show, but she got pretty lost in the post-launch lull. She like kind of assumed that like things were just going to happen. And she didn't really have the right strategy set up or like the kind of like the infrastructure or the simple process that she could just kind of like go through on a weekly basis. So we started working together and I came in, we restructured her, editorial strategy, her release strategy. We built like community ethos and like we built a schedule for her to like actually start doing things consistently. And we started aligning her with the right people. And soon after doing that, like she changed her narrative. People were getting more and more interested in like kind of joining her community and really coming to her as the go-to person when it comes to perimenopause, premenopause, perimenopause. And she really niched there. And she was like, this is my thing. And this is what I'm really going to help people with. And the moment that we did that, the types of people that were coming in that were getting attracted to this show were like highly vetted, because we just went so straight down to this core focus of the problem, that it was so clear. Anyone who engaged in the show. So, let's say 6 months goes by and, 6 to 8 months goes by and, we hit 10,000 downloads a month, which is a huge achievement in the podcast space. And she then soon started to leverage that audience to see how she could help them most. And she was someone who had like her own diet programs, educational programs. And she started to leverage her audience to basically get people into those programs and services. And now after, she's been doing it now for 6 or so years, the podcast really is a huge marketing agent for her business. It accounts for like half of the communication per se, right? Or the engaged communication. So let's say if she says, hey, I'm launching something new, and this is something that people engage with, about half the people that engage in that product come from the podcast specifically. So it really has turned out to be her main communication marketing channel that accounts for a huge portion of her business. Politicology. This is what I like to call a unicorn. And I'm only showing you this to show you the dynamics of like use cases and how podcasts are really these things that you can turn into that are customizable to like your world and what you want to achieve. Politicology was something where our nation was going under some pretty large, political divides, national divides, and we stepped in to try to close that gap to bring Americans together. And to say, at least it worked to our corner on the internet. Our mission here was to help redefine what politics means and not to try to get so caught up in the horse races of like either side or whatever party. And how can we actually focus on what politics means from a day-to-day perspective so more people can come together, even if they have differing views? How can we find collaboration between individuals and humans? Because that's what politics is. It's the inner workings of humans and us and how we live together. So we launched this show. We went for an audience acquisition strategy. All that means is basically like, we basically had a lot of individuals who had a lot of influence, and we saw the opportunity to put those people together and expose, a show to those audiences and use some clever PR introductions to get the show out there. And we did fabulously well. We did over 10 million downloads in the first year, and we're slated for that and more this year. So I'm still an executive producer for Politicology. But what we did here was we went for this big strategy. We built the show, and then we rolled out a donation engine. We rolled out a podcast subscription, and we giving people exclusive content. And that's a different business case where it's kind of a bit lower ticket, where people are, paying, anywhere from $6 to $15 a month to get access to exclusive content and more conversations. So we also started running advertisements because we had such a large audience. Another great example is swinging the pendulum to another different use case of how shows are built is I work with Jay Abraham and Nick Sonnenberg. Both are very kind of prolific in their entrepreneurial space. So Jay Abraham is a very well-known strategic business and marketing coach. And Nick is an operational consultant. So he essentially helps businesses get more operationally sound, structure, project management, and stuff like that. So we saw an opportunity to put these individuals together and also produce separate shows where it could actually turn into a prospect funnel. So instead of building a show that would be the best business podcast in the world, we were actually, what if we didn't focus on being the most popular people in the world? And what if we just focused on creating a tool that could help us generate more business? So we created a prospecting podcast where we created a podcast and we would email out and get interest from people who would want to get advice from these individuals. And then we would set up interviews with them. And essentially what we would do is those people would come onto the show. They would have a very specific burning question that they wanted to ask Nick or Jay. And we would basically record that conversation. And it would be a kind of a mini consulting session, giving that listener or that type of prospect an immense amount of value. And then later on, we have a follow-up sequence where basically that person gets opted into services. We did a first test of the show, and it was so exciting because we literally our first guest ever booked $10,000 worth of services off the back end of going on that one interview. So it was it was the first thing that we did. We're wow, this thing works. And it just really matters. If you're someone who's positioned as someone who can help somebody, you can get people into it. You don't have to have thousands and thousands and thousands of listeners. What you have to have are just individuals who are interested in collaborating and or getting help from you. And you can turn it into something that really works for your business. So again, giving you that context. One final one would be Caroline Strawson. Caroline is kind of just your person next door. She's someone who started helping people in a therapy capacity recover from narcissistic trauma. And she started to develop her own kind of coaching business around that. We saw an opportunity where we're no one's really talking about this. It's hyper niched. Not everyone and their mother is talking about narcissistic trauma and how you can redevelop, how you can fix yourself from it. It's definitely getting more popular, but at the time that we launched the show, it was very under the radar. So it's been famously successful with her. We went for a very niche strategy. We focused on the right collaborations, and we were also in the right place at the right time. And she's done, actually at this stage, she's done more than 2 million. She's done over 3 million downloads. And I would say outside of the vanity, because I can sit here and say 20 million downloads, 10 million downloads, 3 million downloads, that's not really the point. The point is the biggest bullet here that really had the biggest impact for Caroline on her personal life, her authority, and her business was the type of collaboration and business opportunities that came out of collaborating with other individuals in the podcasting space. That is really the catalyst that did wonders for her. The audience and developing the audience is a beautiful piece to all of it. That's very, very valuable. But I would say the biggest thing that affected her was once she got into the ecosystem and she started, bringing people on her podcast and going on other people's podcasts, it really started to open up these doors that were never there before. And I think that's really a part of the power of podcasting. And it's really something that sits under, it's like an iceberg. It's just under the water. And like most people don't kind of like see it that way. And they just think about, oh, people start podcasts and they get big audiences. But really there is something that's a lot deeper here that is something that is very unutilized. And that's what I really help people do. So let's knock into opportunity, kind of learning number one. The reason why podcasting is becoming the fastest growing communication and like community channel. So let's like take a bit of a 50,000 foot view of what's going on. So without a doubt, podcasting is one of the least saturated platforms. As of this year, there's close to 5 million podcasts online. What's important to understand here in like a 5 million number is that is a total count. That includes canceled shows, includes dead shows. It includes the shows that everyone's 16-year-old daughter made during quarantine, right? That's like not doing anything now. It's like it is a total count of people who have submitted shows onto the internet. As of this month, there's just over 2 million active shows on the internet. And what that means is basically someone who's consistently releasing one episode every month. Now, that might not sound like a whole lot, right? Like, oh, well, one episode, what is that doing for people? But it really just gives you an idea for like the consistent individuals who are doing things in the space. To give you some context, like today, there are more than 37 million active YouTube creator accounts. So that's like the equivalent, right? So it's like there's, around 2 to 3 million active shows in podcasting. There are more than 37 million active accounts in the YouTube space that are doing kind of the same thing. They're consistently uploading on a monthly basis. So statistically speaking, we are just at like the starting point of podcasting becoming something that is really in the space that's something that is considered. This stat blows me away, and I always like to like kind of talk about it just because it shows you kind of like the really fast adoption rate that's happening now. So pre-pandemic, right around here, 2019, there were 800,000 shows in existence on the internet. So past 2 to 3 years, we've well over double, close to tripled. Like it's this incredible growth rate. And the fact is simple, is that podcasting is now getting popular. But even with that said, it's incredibly early days comparative to other long format content platforms. So now that we know a bit like, okay, cool. We know that there's like a couple million active podcasts. We also know that in the shadow of like other long format content platforms like YouTube, we're seeing that there's this context here. Okay, so it's like a bit of early days. It's growing at an incredible rate. I want you guys to try to understand the type of individuals who consume podcasts, because that's incredibly important. Because if you're a leader, or someone who is growing your authority and looking to impact more people, it's important to understand who those people are. Fact of the matter is like the quality of podcasting, or the quality of the audience in podcasting is, I would say, literally in a class of its own. Even looking at Nielsen, Edison, Wondering, Art19 data that's released every single year, quarterly and every single year, and even the Nielsen data that came out for 2022, like, the writing's on the wall. If we just look at the US base, like in this case that I've prepared here, US consumer data, we know that 177 million Americans consume and engage in podcasts. Newsflash, right? It's like, that's over half the US population. So it's like, it's an incredible amount of people who are now engaging, and over half that listening base is over the age of 35. Now, close to half that pool are also college educated, they're employed, and they have an annual household income between $100,000 and $220,000 a year. This one also blows me away, is that 46 million listeners of that pool that I'm talking about, they consume more podcasts than video streaming. Think about your Netflixes, think about your HBOs, think about your Disney Plus. So as I'm laying all this out, and as I look into the world and I think about platforms, opportunities, the types of audiences, what does this all mean? And really, to sum it up, it's like, I laugh when I think about this, because it's just like, people who consume podcasts, they're educated professionals with money, and they're hungry for quality content and they want to learn. It's, if you're someone who wants to position yourself to help people in the world, you want to go into an area to help, put your product and service in front of targeted and statistically likely to buy audiences, it's blaring, for me, it's blaring me in the face to be like, wow, okay, podcasting is like literally a place that is a good environment to do this in. So now that we have talked about, let's say, we understand the ecosystem, we understand that it's growing, we understand it with some context of like other platforms, and we also know a bit more about like the quality of the audience. Let's talk about like the edges here. And like, there's all these different ways that you can engage with individuals and get your authority out in the world. And I want to talk about some of the things that I have found to be the most helpful and unique when it comes to podcasting. So, edge number one, podcasting really does provide one of the most easiest and cost-effective ways of collaborating with leaders. Getting in front of ideal audiences and growing a targeted community. And really just turn around and like ask anyone who has started a podcast, like, and ask them, what did you need to get started? Like literally you need a microphone and a computer and a good internet connection. You don't need studios. You don't need like fancy equipment. You don't need to deal with complicated video equipment or cameras or lighting, and for that matter, you don't even need to do the whole song and dance on social media. You see everyone out there like doing all the social media content. Like you actually don't need to do any of that with podcasting. Obviously, like there are people who do, and it helps. But in terms of a barrier to entry, it doesn't require any of those things. And that in of itself, when it comes to individuals who are maybe strapped for time, they don't have all the experience in the world with, technology and or video equipment, it provides a wonderful platform to step into and actually start achieving some of the things that you want to achieve. Second, easy collaboration experiences. Really, the fact of the matter with this one is that it is a whole lot more likely that you are going to book a podcast interview with the person that you want to meet and collaborate with than it is getting coffee or having dinner or having lunch with that person. Statistically speaking, it's more than 10 to 1. We're on the internet nowadays. Everyone wants to collaborate and do cool things together. Everyone wants to get in front of other audiences and come to other people's communities to provide their own value. Really, like when you build a platform and a community, people want to be engaged in that. When it's targeted, right? Not everyone and their mother wants to do it, but like literally the people who matter want to be in those communities. Also, I laugh at this one. It's like people just like love talking about themselves. So it's never really that hard of a sell. Like people who want to like get in front of people, like they love talking. They love like sharing their knowledge. They love going off there and helping people on their journey. So like when you build a podcast and you like bring people into the ecosystem to like guest and be a part of it, like it's just part of the nicety that is podcasting. Third edge. This is a bit like Brainiac on my side, but it's something that I hate to ignore, is Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google, the big tech giants. They're all in an arms race right now. They're buying talent, technology, and at a rate that we actually haven't seen since the .com boom. And I mean, just a footnote here, like Spotify alone, they spent more than $500 million last year on buying technology and talent. So they went off and they secured exclusive rights to some podcasts that were getting popular. They went and bought podcasting technology that they knew that they could like acquire and put under their wing. So what this says to me is, as I keep watching this space, and by the way, that's happening across all of these platforms, they're all doing it, is that this is kind of like the new digital gold rush in a way. This isn't happening in YouTube land. Google bought YouTube and they owned it from the very, very start. And they literally squashed anyone else in the process. What's so unique about podcasting is that it is purely a decentralized system. Not one person owns it. You own your podcast. It's not like you sign up for YouTube and then Google's kind of like this thing that's up in the cloud that's kind of like owning everything. Like with podcasting, it really is this last frontier of like you getting to create something that is yours and it's not somebody else's. So I like to think about this as the new gold rush, because all these companies are trying to like keep up and they see where the opportunity is coming from. And it creates a lot of more opportunities for podcasters and consumers. Think about it. These technology companies that are buying up platforms and audiences are wanting to do one thing and one thing only. They want people to pay attention to them and use their products and services. And what happens with that is that there's more innovation and opportunity for people to podcast and also for people to listen. So it's something that's like adapting, and it's like this refrigerator hum in the background. And also newsflash, like in the past 3 months, Twitter and TikTok have both rolled out podcasting as a part of their platform. So what does it tell us, right? They wouldn't be doing it if they didn't think it was valuable. So it's kind of like all these little, like, I watch the space and I see all these little like glimmers and these flashes of light. I'm like, that's very interesting. So I think just the fact that this is happening is an edge, because it's not happening in other areas of media or other platforms. Fourth, it's kind of like, it's like the elephant in the room, and I've already talked about it. It's just early days. Like if we literally just look at how things are growing and like what is happening, it's still early days. And the opportunity is sitting there for people who want to share their message and build communities. And I very much think that's an edge. Okay. Let me check the chat. I know that there are a couple things here. Okay, cool. So we've understood a few things, right? So we talked about the opportunity, what the ecosystem is doing, the quality of the audiences, the unique edges that podcasting has, and that it is an easy platform to get into. And it really has some of these like under the water moments that like aren't really being talked about, that people are taking advantage of. I'm sure you guys are all thinking they're like, this might be interesting. Like you may not know some of this stuff, or maybe you did, but you're thinking about it in a different way. I want you guys to start thinking about maybe about yourself. And like, you could be thinking, well, could I ever podcast? Like, is that a thing? So I want to walk you through my decision filter that I walk all my clients through. Like I walk people on discovery calls through this type of stuff. At the end of the day, I want everyone to make the best decision for themselves. So podcasters and podcasts come in all shapes and sizes, but there are 3 key areas that I've seen in the most, with the most consistent shows that I've launched and that I've worked with, the ones that I've seen that are working. And they're really individuals and brands who are solving problems, building community, and they're looking to inspire. Those are the things that they're doing. Now, that quotient, that quality of solving problems, building community, and looking to inspire, like it needs to be met, in my experience, with a few like personal drivers for who will be the host or the host representing the show, right? So first off, like I find that your level of care needs to be present, a genuine desire to do it. It's almost like, this is how I like to describe it. You should feel called to podcasting. It should feel like something that you're like, you know what, I'm connected to this in some weird way. And maybe I don't fully understand it, but I feel connected. That's incredibly important. Second, you should really like talking to people, because that's literally the entire nature of the platform. So if you're someone who just likes to recluse into the back corner of an office and just kind of be there and do your thing, this might not be for you. Also, I'd like to challenge people and crack them out of their shells, because sometimes people really do want to talk. They just never had the right opportunity to do it. Also, passion. Now, passion doesn't pay the bills. Passion doesn't drive revenue, but passion is really important for getting people to like you. And that might just sound a little off, but it's kind of very important, because if you can't inspire and show people the opportunity and show people the challenge and how to conquer their own dragons or the dragons, people aren't going to want to stick around. They're not going to want to be someone who feels connected to what you're doing, or that there is an opportunity there. It's incredibly important. So I walked you through the personal decision filter. I feel like maybe that resonated with some of you. I saw some smiles and nod and nods. So I'm glad that you're connecting on that. I have an exercise for people who maybe have a brand or a business, and to help them think about how podcasting can help their business. And podcasting is something that's really interesting because it's super multi-tooled. It's not necessarily a catch-all, but it's something that you really can leverage in interesting ways. So let me tell you about that. I have this exercise that back in my growth marketing days, I would take every single client through. And it helps contextualize things to understand where are your problems and what should you be focusing on. I then take this and marry this with podcasting so you can understand maybe where your challenges are and then how podcasting could potentially help them. So I call this exercise ACR. There are three main factors in a business. Attraction. How are you getting your clients? Conversion. How are they buying from you? And 3, retention. Are you keeping them? How are you keeping them in your business? Are you turning them into advocates? What is that long-term relationship with them? Now, most times, there's always some sort of imbalance here. I know businesses that are amazing marketers, but they literally can't keep clients in their business for 2 months, right? They have a high churn rate. Clients come in, they buy, and then they're out. I also know people who have probably the best solution to certain problems in the world, but they have a really hard time getting people to their products and services. Giving you just some examples here. So as an independent or an entrepreneur, obviously it's our responsibility to look at these areas and be great, okay, so I need support, or I need a system or a process or a person that can help in some of these areas. So then it becomes a time, energy decision, right? Great. In terms of these 3, where do I need help? Do I need help everywhere? Do I need help in just one area? Usually it's really good to try to focus in one to really figure out, maybe the biggest driver. But what's so unique about podcasting is that it actually can help in all of these areas. And again, it's not a catch-all. It's not going to solve every single problem, but what it will do is it can foster a lot of really positive activity. And what I mean by that is if you have a difficulty attracting people to your business, or let's say acquiring audiences or getting more authority, podcasting provides you an easy access into networking, guesting, and collaboration opportunities immediately. Once you start your own podcast, or you set yourself up for success in guesting on other shows, you've immediately put yourself into an ecosystem where you can, on day one, start leveraging other people's audiences that they've already built. You don't need to build your own. Obviously, that's kind of the whole strategy long-term, you're going to be constantly building your own. But from an attraction perspective, you can start to very strategically get yourself in front of other audiences that are ideal for how you help people in the world. Let's give it the author side too. I have so many clients who are authors that have their own podcast because it's highly valuable for them to do that. But then they also go on virtual book tours, right? So they are launching a new book and they literally go on the book train. Like we set up an entire guesting experience for them. They go on other people's podcasts and those people come on their podcasts. And what are they doing the entire time? They're CTAing their book. They're sending the hosts of those shows a little excerpt of their book, something to focus on. That could be the primary driver of the conversation. Huge opportunity for attraction. Conversion. Well, starting a podcast is actually a great conversion tool, because statistically speaking, we know from great sales trainers that know, like, and trust is one of the most valuable things that you can build. People are way more statistically likely to purchase from you when they like you and when they know you and when you're solving and helping their problems along the way. So if you create a podcast that helps people understand you in the world, helps them solve their problems, helps educate them, brings in other people that solve other problems that they didn't know that they had, or adds a different context to the conversation, it's incredibly helpful for basically curating an audience that wants to engage with you long term. And 3, retention. I've literally had clients that we went and start podcasts just for their client base. We've started podcasts just for their employee bases. The employee-based one's kind of for some bigger brands, people who have, maybe a couple hundred employees and more. But you could literally create a podcast that's just for your client base. And maybe it's just an exclusive podcast that is just for people who engage with you. And it's where you kind of update them and bring them up to speed on what you're doing. And the employee example, it's a way for companies to actually communicate and disseminate information. Okay, cool. I know that we're kind of coming up on time. I want to leave some time at the end for us to, maybe talk about questions and kind of what you guys have learned. I usually get to this point in the masterclass and people are like, okay, cool. So you can start a podcast, you can start guesting, you can do nothing. You don't have to do any of those things if you don't want to. But a lot of times people are just asking me, basically, what should I do? Should I start a podcast? Should I start guesting on podcasts? Should I do both? So I just want to take a quick moment here to maybe just break some of those things down so you guys maybe understand some of the drivers between those two. So let's start with starting a podcast, what that means, what it gives you. Well, starting a podcast really immediately can increase your authority. Launching a podcast and setting a consistent scheduling and publishing schedule, it can lift your authority within your circles and beyond. The fact of the matter is not everyone is willing to put themselves out there. The majority of everyone is not willing to put themselves out there. You guys are all authors. You've put yourself out there, right? So it's not everyone is willing to do it. And you also know the work that it took to get it done. So there is a threshold to doing it. That in itself is an opportunity because it weeds out all of the people who shouldn't be doing it or might cloud the space. When you create, attention naturally flows to the ones who are putting themselves out there consistently. The cool thing about podcasting is that you can be consistently launching. As you kind of know with being an author, you can't just consistently launch books all the time. It's a different type of process. You can marry these two things together. That becomes very, very interesting. Another one, starting a podcast, you can just leverage content. Podcasting, in my experience, is the highest leverage platform for easy content creation. This is what we do for all my shows at the agency and the shows that I work with, is essentially we take the episodes that we record and then we transform them into micro pieces. So think about it this way. From a 40-minute episode, we then create a narrative to feed their content ecosystem. So think about, we record everything video first in our own mobile recording studio, on the internet. But then we take that content and we can create it into video highlights, audiograms, quote cards, educational carousels, like this diverse content map that isn't just a podcast anymore, right? It's actually authority driving content. So we have the podcast, and what we've done at the end of all of this is I've taken 4 hours of my client's time at the top of the month, and I've turned it into 20 plus hours of content. It's highly leveraged. You actually, what's really cool is that you actually kind of can't do this anywhere else. You can do it in book writing, right? So you can write a book, and then you can kind of like take that book and you could do different things with it. Same concept. It's a long format to short format content. But the time leverage here is what's so interesting, is that you can actually take just a small amount of time in long form and turn it into something very interesting and creative at the same time. I look at that as amazing, amazing leverage. Most people who gravitate to the space are looking to usually expand and reach new targeted people. And as we know from earlier in our session, like the quality of podcasting audiences, this space is qualified area to start to build highly engaged audiences. It's a great place to be if you're someone who's looking to get to people who want to learn, and then also have the resources to engage at some various step. Another one, starting a podcast, like the sheer fact of launching a podcast, and if you do it right, it turns you into a positive target for collaboration opportunities that really wouldn't have been available to you otherwise. So other leaders, experts, audiences in the podcast space all want to collaborate with other communities. It's what makes it all turn around. And another one here, like lastly, it's this concept of like preeminence. Like when you add all these pieces together that I've just talked about here, you are building consistent omnipresence within your circles, like in your niche, and you're establishing yourself on the internet as really that go-to figure in whatever space that you're trying to capitalize on. So when someone searches for you, your solution, what their problem is, you are the one that can consistently rank in the search items. You are the one that is consistently kind of showing up as that person who's talking about these problems. You know, you are being elevated with other leaders. So let's talk about guesting. A lot of people talk to me about guesting. And what are the benefits for leaders? So first off, we talked about this a bit before, but like by positioning yourself as a valuable guest with subject matter expertise, you can leverage existing audiences that have already been developed. And with the right strategies, you can put yourself in front of like a lot of ideal audiences that are statistically likely to engage, to follow you, to kind of continue that type of relationship. Because they, as we know, they're individuals who like want to learn and that they're highly engaged. Another one, this is kind of really cool. Like literally just by guesting, you can leverage another person's content with actually without actually having to do anything besides just show up, right? Like it's not a catch-all, but it's a nice piece to the entire thing. It's like, wow, I can go provide value and they're going to put me out there and help me grow my authority. Check. It's a great piece. With the right guesting strategy, you can align yourself with the right leaders that can lift your authority. Now, it would be remiss of me if I wasn't going to like kind of maybe talk about the crown jewel here, like, you know, kind of what I see as like the most beneficial decisions for people who are interested in podcasting, and really particularly people who are wanting to grow more of an audience, not spend all the world and time doing it, leverage other existing ecosystems, grow their authority and their influence. What that secret jewel is, like the crown jewel here, it's a marriage. And it really is both of these things in the same place. You can do both of them independently, but in my experience and showing you all the podcasts that I've worked on and talking about the results and talking about the opportunities here, like this is what I do with people. And this is also what I've seen to be the most effective quotient, is that you can align yourself with an easy collaboration schedule every other week, and you can swap on and off. You develop your content, you go and guest on another podcast, you develop your content, you go on another podcast. Most people here spend a certain amount of time every week on attraction related activities. So that means prospecting calls, talking with other leaders, thinking about collaboration, so on and so forth, right? I can guess on average, maybe people spend 6 hours a week doing that. At least within a lot of people that I work with, they spend at least 6 hours a week doing that. We could literally just take a fraction of that hours and turn what you're already doing into targeted content for a community. It really is simple as that. It's really just retooling the way that you think about it. Like you're usually already talking to some of the right people. It's just kind of like, how do you reframe that and then capture it and get it into the world? So, okay. I know that
Powerful, like, yeah.
okay. I know that we're on time. So that's kind of like, I have a lot of other things that I could talk about, but I feel like, I think it'd be more valuable to just give a few moments and talk about what people's questions might be, or if they have questions.
Yeah, let's do that, because I want to take a couple minutes for questions, and I also want for you to let people know how to get in touch with you. Sure. If they're interested in finding out more about what this would actually look like for them to start their own podcast, be a better guest, that kind of stuff.
Of course. Love it.
So
let's start with the questions. Euler.
Robin, go ahead.
I have a question. Hi, Ike. That was a really interesting presentation. Now, how does one promote your podcast? So you want to start a podcast, you do a couple of episodes, put them on YouTube or wherever, but how do you get that promoted?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It's also a bit of a longer explanation, but like the short of it is getting your podcast promoted is like, I think what you're really asking is like, how do I get people to listen? Mm-hmm. Right? So there's two questions to that. It's creating content that people want to listen to. And then it's also putting that content in ecosystems where people can find it. So it's two parts. I'm not going to talk about the creating the content part, because that's a whole thing that we get to. It's something that like I literally teach people in my programs and like we focus on, but like do you have a podcast currently? I think I saw someone have a podcast here. Was that you? No. Okay. So in terms of getting your podcast in ecosystems where people will hear it, like this is where it becomes really important to like think about your ideal listener and understand, am I creating content that resonates with them? Perfect. Then how can I put that content in interesting ecosystem? So can I clip it down and create little audiograms or shorts? Should I start putting that in communities that I'm already engaging with? Take stock of your current, do you have an email list? Are you on social media? Or if you don't have some of those things, or they're not like, let's say, in the thousands of tens of thousands, right? Like it's still valuable if you have something, but starting to identify certain Facebook groups, certain community groups, or, so on and so forth, other communities that might want to collaborate with that podcast. It's finding where those audiences are, but can kind of like start to kickstart a little of that growth. Like that's kind of a part that I would want to just tease. Another part is something that I teach in my accelerators, particularly focused, is something that I call podcast accelerator formula. It's actually a part of the presentation slide, but I'll just give you the quick hit on it right now. Is essentially creating content on the internet isn't just kind of I'm just going to create something that I think someone's going to like and get it out there. For example, this is a high level view of what podcast accelerator formula is. And what it is it's a structured process for you to outrank and start ranking your content so it shows up in search results and ecosystems the right way. And it gets back to my earlier point where it's about the content that you create and then where is it going to go. So for example, you'll want to research to understand what are people on the internet searching for? By the way, there are free tools that tell us that now. Answer the Public and Google Trends. You guys can go look those up right now and actually start figuring out what people are literally actively looking for. We take that and we take it a step further and we start focusing on, well, where are the trends, or what are people really needing right now? Then we can marry that with good keyword and title strategies, and then optimizing our episodes. So we know straight from the get-go, like, great, we know people are looking for this. I have the solutions and problems for people. Let me create good content that's targeted. So when someone literally searches in on Google, how do I do this? Or I need help with this. How do I get this? Whatever those phrases might be, you are statistically more likely to start showing up in those search results, right? That's just one positive behavior of this. If people do the accelerator formula and they start doing it consistently, then people are going to start ranking within Apple Podcasts and Spotify podcasts. Like, there's these ecosystems where podcasts exist, right? And all of this energy goes to that. So you ask, like, hey, basically, how do I get people to listen to my podcast? There's not obviously one answer, but it's kind of like the consistency of being smart with a good strategy and really focusing on who those people are and their problems and how you can help them. And the more that people do that consistently, it literally wins every day of the week. I'm not telling you right now that you're going to start a podcast that week and have everything happen in 1 month. I'm here to tell you it's literally not going to happen. But if you do it consistently, it's just like, anyone who wins here have done it for a longer period of time. If I was going to just give you a quick thing, 6 months is usually the period of time that people do it consistently, and it all really starts clicking. It's like a slow trickle. It's kind of like this one thing kind of happens and this other thing, and then you start to pick up the momentum with it.
Yeah, I have a client who's got a podcast, and that's exactly his story. He had to really hang in there and have faith for 6 or 8 months, and and now it's like really taken off. It's more than a year into it now, and he's doing really well.
Just to add to that point though, like, if you marry that new podcast with podcast guesting, you immediately put yourself in front of other audiences. So you ask, well, where do I find listeners? Well, you could literally go position yourself in front of other audiences, get them to like you. And then if you have a podcast, the podcast to podcast transition, think about it this way. If you're on Facebook right now, how much more statistically likely are you to then go to another platform if you see something there? Statistically, not very high. But if you communicate with people on the same platform, be like, hey, my podcast is over here. They're podcast listeners. They love podcasts. They want to engage. So it's having those two, which is like really powerful combination. Hopefully I answered your question. It wasn't too long-winded. Sorry.
Thank you. And I wish we had more time for questions, but we really need to wrap up. I do try to stay on time. So Ike, if people want to reach out to you to find more, to follow you on social media, tell us how we do that.
I'm really Ike Fontaine everywhere. That's how you can really find me. I'll put some things in the chat right now, and you guys can copy and paste them. And I'm sure we can.
Fantastic. And then you guys can save the chat.
I'm sure we can also like link to some. We can link to something maybe in like the Facebook event or something. That's my email. And then also, like, I'm always kind of like doing essentially discovery calls and helping people with their journey. I'm actually in a particular moment right now where I have a program called Podcast Accelerator, which essentially it's a program that helps people develop, launch, and grow podcasts in 8 weeks. And that opens up late February. If anyone wants to like kind of look at it and be interested, I'm happy to have conversations and talk to you more about it, and you could learn all about it. There's a web link for apply to podcastaccelerator.com. But shoot me an email. Like, I'm happy to answer your questions. I'm even on Facebook. So like, if you guys just want to friend me on Facebook, because I'm in the group, I'm happy to chat and like talk to you guys about where you're at. But thanks. It's great to see so many of you here on a what is it, a Tuesday afternoon?
Afternoon. Yep.
So
Ike, and Ike also has a great presence on LinkedIn and some great posts and videos and stuff on there. So you can go and learn, see what he's up to, and what's new in the podcast world. So Ike, you have given us tremendous value and information today. So thank you so much. I feel like I learned a whole lot more just about the basics of podcast and why it's important. So thank you so much. I think you offered us tremendous information and value today, and couldn't thank you more.
Thank you so much. It was great to
Thanks
see you all.
much.
Thanks for the questions and the lively conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming and visiting our community. We appreciate you.
Cool. Yeah, and we'll put a post in like the group, and people can get in touch and stuff like that.
That'd be perfect.
Okay, awesome.
Okay,
Lovely,
thanks so
guys.
much. Thanks everybody
well.
for being here.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.